What if I told you that this blank canvas already contains a masterpiece, and all we have to do is unlock the emotion hidden inside it? Today we are not painting reality. We are painting energy, movement, freedom, and raw emotion through abstract art. And by the end of this video, you will see how chaos transforms into something powerful, cinematic, and deeply personal. Welcome back to the studio, everyone. Today we are creating something deeply emotional, expressive, and completely free from rules because abstract art is not about painting what the eye can see. It is about painting what the soul can feel. And before we even touch the canvas, I want you to pause for a moment and really look at this empty white space in front of us, because this blank canvas is not empty at all. It is filled with possibility, movement, memory, energy, and emotion waiting to come alive through color and texture. And that is one of the most beautiful things about abstract painting, because every artwork begins with uncertainty. Every masterpiece begins with a first imperfect mark. And today I want this video to inspire you to create fearlessly. Whether you are a beginner holding a paintbrush for the first time or an experienced artist searching for a new wave of inspiration, this process is about intuition, freedom, and emotional storytelling through paint. So as the camera slowly moves across the materials on the table, you can see heavy-body acrylic paints, large brushes, palette knives, charcoal, water spray bottles, textured mediums, soft cloths, metallic pigments, and a large stretched canvas waiting to become something alive. And I always say that art materials are more than tools because they become extensions of emotion. They become instruments of expression, almost like a musician preparing for a performance. And every color we choose today carries emotional meaning. The deep ultramarine blue represents mystery and distance. Burnt orange represents movement and passion. Black creates contrast and emotional gravity. White gives the composition breadth and openness. And gold symbolizes fragments of light, resilience, memory, and transformation. And before you begin your own abstract painting, I want you to ask yourself a simple question. What emotion do you want this artwork to communicate? Because abstract art becomes far more powerful when you paint feelings instead of simply arranging colors. And as soft cinematic music plays quietly in the background, I begin with loose charcoal lines across the canvas, not to create strict outlines, but to create emotional pathways, movement, rhythm, and direction. Because these early marks are not permanent plans. They are conversations with the canvas. And one of the biggest misconceptions about abstract art is that people think it is random. But true abstract painting is deeply intentional even when it feels spontaneous. Every texture, every layer, every gesture carries emotional energy. And now I begin applying the first layer using diluted acrylic paint and broad sweeping movements across the surface, allowing drips to form naturally and colors to blend unpredictably. And I want viewers to understand that the first layer should feel fearless because this stage creates the emotional atmosphere of the entire artwork. And if you overthink too early, the painting can lose its energy before it even begins. So instead of trying to control every detail, I focus on movement and rhythm, almost like dancing with the canvas. Because abstract painting is physical as much as emotional. The speed of the brush, the pressure of the hand, the direction of movement, all of these things influence the emotional vibration inside the artwork. And this is why many professional abstract artists stand while painting, because the body itself becomes part of the creative process. And as the paint drips downward naturally, I remind viewers that some of the most beautiful moments in abstract art happen accidentally. Some textures cannot be planned. Some color interactions cannot be predicted. And learning to embrace unpredictability is one of the most important skills an abstract artist can develop. And now, while the first layer remains slightly wet, I begin adding texture medium with a large palette knife, spreading thick material across certain sections of the canvas, scraping through wet paint to reveal hidden layers underneath. And texture is extremely important in abstract art because texture allows light to interact physically with the surface, creating movement and depth that photographs can never fully capture. And every layer becomes part of the artwork's history. Even the hidden layers still influence the final result, just as hidden memories influence human identity. And that philosophical connection is what makes abstract art feel deeply personal and emotionally powerful. And now, I introduce stronger contrasts by adding bold black marks against soft blended backgrounds, splattering paint carefully to create energy and unpredictability, spraying water to encourage organic drips and flowing movement. And contrast is essential because contrast creates tension, and tension keeps the eye moving throughout the composition. Without contrast, a painting can feel emotionally silent. So I balance calm, open areas with energetic sections filled with movement and texture, soft, transparent washes beside thick, aggressive marks, delicate lines beside bold, dramatic gestures. And while working, I constantly step back from the canvas because distance helps reveal the overall composition. And one mistake many beginners make is becoming trapped in tiny details too early without understanding the painting as a whole. And now, as the layers continue building, I begin discussing creative fear and self-doubt. Because almost every artist experiences moments where the painting looks chaotic, unfinished, or even terrible halfway through the process. And that is completely normal because transformation requires uncertainty. Many abstract paintings look broken before they finally come together. And this is where patience becomes part of the artistic process. Professional artists continue layering, adjusting, editing, and responding to the canvas until harmony begins to emerge naturally. And creativity requires trust because not every answer appears immediately. Sometimes the artwork slowly reveals itself over hours or days. And now I begin experimenting with more intuitive mark making using unconventional tools like cloth, cardboard edges, and even fingertips to create textures that feel raw and expressive. Because innovation in abstract art often comes from curiosity and experimentation rather than perfection. And I encourage viewers to surprise themselves by using unexpected techniques, because originality comes from combining materials and movements in personal ways rather than copying someone else's exact style. And now metallic gold enters the composition softly, catching light across the textured surface. And reflective elements are fascinating because they change depending on the viewing angle and lighting conditions, making the artwork feel alive and constantly shifting. And I apply these metallic accents carefully because restraint is just as important as expression. One of the hardest lessons for beginners is learning when to stop painting, because overworking the canvas can destroy the energy that made it beautiful in the first place. And a successful abstract painting should feel alive rather than exhausted. Sometimes leaving certain areas unresolved creates mystery and sophistication. And now I begin discussing composition more deeply because even the most expressive abstract paintings still rely on strong visual structure, focal points, visual pathways, balance, negative space, rhythm, and emotional packing all influence how the viewer experiences the artwork. And sometimes moving one dark shape or adding one small highlight completely changes the emotional balance of the composition. And I often rotate the canvas while painting because changing orientation can reveal stronger compositions hidden within the process. And flexibility is essential because abstract art evolves organically rather than following rigid plans. And now, as more layers build across the surface, I talk about the relationship between destruction and creation. Because sometimes artists must paint over sections they originally loved in order to create a stronger final piece. And this can feel emotionally difficult because we naturally become attached to certain moments in the painting. But growth often requires letting go of what feels safe in order to discover something more powerful. So I partially cover a beautiful textured section while allowing fragments to remain visible underneath, creating depth and history within the composition. And those hidden traces become evidence of the artwork's evolution through time. And now, I transition into smaller details using thin brushes and delicate controlled gestures, adding subtle linear elements that connect larger forms throughout the painting. And these details function like whispers inside the louder visual language of the artwork. rewarding close observation and creating intimacy between the painting and the viewer. And varying scale is extremely important because large expressive gestures become more dynamic when contrasted against intricate details. And this balance between freedom and control gives abstract painting sophistication and emotional richness. And now, as the artwork begins approaching completion, I ask viewers to notice how the emotional atmosphere of the painting has changed since the beginning. Does it feel calm, explosive, mysterious, meditative, nostalgic, empowering, or cinematic? Because successful abstract art communicates emotion without requiring recognizable imagery. And one of the most beautiful aspects of abstract painting is that every viewer brings their own experiences and emotions into the interpretation, meaning there is never only one correct understanding of the artwork. And as the camera moves slowly across the textured surface, viewers can see drips, scratches, layered edges, transparent washes, metallic reflections, and areas where earlier colors remain partially exposed beneath newer layers. And these physical textures allow light itself to become part of the artwork, because the painting changes depending on natural or artificial lighting throughout the day, giving original abstract art a living presence impossible to fully capture digitally. And now I begin refining the final composition carefully by adding small highlights where brightness is needed and deepening shadows where contrast feels weak, simplifying overworked sections by painting them back down. And editing is one of the most important stages in professional abstract art because sometimes subtraction creates more power than addition. An experienced artist often spend long periods simply observing the canvas quietly, because observation reveals what is missing and what feels unnecessary. And now I discuss inspiration and creative blocks because many people believe inspiration appears magically. But inspiration actually grows through action, experimentation, music, memory, architecture, photography, travel, nature, and emotional experience. And abstract artists train themselves to notice emotional atmospheres everywhere around them. Reflections in rainwater, peeling paint on old walls, shadows moving across concrete, storms rolling through the sky, city lights at night. All of these things can inspire color palettes, textures, and movement within abstract compositions. And now I discreetly sign the painting in the corner and speak about artistic identity, because developing a personal style takes time and should evolve naturally through years of practice and experimentation. Beginners often pressure themselves to become unique immediately, but authentic style emerges slowly through repetition, curiosity, failure, and honest emotional expression. And social media can create unrealistic expectations, because people usually share only finished successful artworks rather than the years of mistakes and unsuccessful experiments behind artistic growth. And as the completed painting fills the screen, I reflect on the emotional journey of the process, because abstract art teaches freedom, courage, patience, trust, and vulnerability. It teaches artists to communicate emotion without needing literal explanation. And every painting, even unsuccessful ones, contributes to growth because no time spent creating art is ever wasted. And now, while soft music continues, the camera captures cinematic close-up shots of the final artwork, showing textured ridges catching light, subtle transparent layers creating atmosphere, energetic gestures flowing across the composition, and delicate details hidden inside larger forms. And I describe the artwork as an emotional landscape, where darker areas represent uncertainty and introspection, while brighter passages symbolize movement toward clarity and transformation. And the energetic marks create momentum, while calm, open spaces allow the eye to rest and breathe. And I encourage viewers not to search for one fixed meaning, because great abstract art remains open enough for emotional participation. And now I speak about vulnerability in abstract painting, because unlike realism, there is no recognizable subject to hide behind. Every decision becomes personal, emotional, instinctive, and direct. And that vulnerability is exactly what gives abstract art its power. And perfection is not the goal, because perfection often removes humanity from creativity. Some of the most powerful paintings in history contain roughness, unpredictability, and visible evidence of the artist's hand. And those imperfections become part of the artwork's authenticity. And now I share practical advice for artists who want to improve, encouraging them to work on larger canvases sometimes because larger formats promote physical freedom and expressive movement, to experiment with limited color palettes in order to strengthen harmony, to study photography, cinema, and design for compositional inspiration, and most importantly to create consistently, because confidence develops through repetition and experience rather than waiting for motivation. And as the video slowly approaches its ending, I discuss layering in more depth, because layering creates emotional complexity within abstract painting. Transparent layers build atmospheric depth, while thick opaque passages create physical intensity. Scratches and exposed underlayers reveal time and process within the artwork, turning the painting almost into an archaeological surface filled with visual memories. And now I speak about the relationship between music and painting, because rhythm influences gesture and emotional flow dramatically. Ambient music may inspire soft meditative blending, while energetic music encourages aggressive movement and dynamic brushwork. And experimenting with different sound environments can completely transform the energy of a painting session. And now I explore color psychology further, explaining how warm colors create movement and intensity, while cool colors often create calmness and introspection. Highly saturated colors generate excitement, while muted palettes feel atmospheric and sophisticated. But emotional authenticity always matters more than strict color theory rules. And finally, as the camera slowly fades across the completed abstract painting one last time, I remind viewers that abstract art is not about proving technical perfection or seeking approval from everyone. It is about emotional honesty, exploration, freedom, and connection. And every artist has a unique voice waiting to emerge through courage and practice. So trust your instincts, embrace imperfection, keep experimenting fearlessly, and never stop creating, because the canvas is not simply a surface for paint. It is a space where emotion becomes visible, where movement becomes memory, and where imagination transforms into something powerful enough to inspire others long after the final brushstroke has dried.